We sailed from Trinidad to Los Testigos, which are a group of small islands off the coast of Venezuela. Los Testigos means the witnesses in Spanish. We arrived in Los Roques, which are another group of very beautiful small islands off the coast of Venezuela. We anchored here in this lovely bay at West Cay. It was, however, rather a rolly anchorage. These islands are uninhabited. This is Cayo de Agua. Cayo de Agua is joined to West Cay, the island across the way, by a sandspit which is sometimes covered by the sea and sometimes you can walk across it like a causeway.
This island is called Cayo de Agua, which means island of water, and so I'm assuming that there are some springs here of fresh water. This looks as though it might be large. Well, we don't want the cork to break, so we're being very careful about getting it off, because this is a festive day for us. We have much to be thankful for. We've come this far and we're going all the way to Australia with happy memories and healthy days and beautiful weather. Today it has been overcast, which is nice. It wasn't too hot. All right. And our menu is going to be shrimp from the market, and then we're having lamb shakes from England, potatoes from the market, lima beans from Hilo, and pickles from England, I think, and lamb also from, or mint jelly from Hilo too. The lamb.
Put it over rice.
Yeah. Mm. Wow, these are absolutely gorgeous. I think I'll leave my bone in. Just get the meat out. Ah.
1,000 steps in Bonaire. Stone steps lead down to the beach. The northern part of the island is wild and rugged and very beautiful, covered with cacti.
Right here, very close. You might be able to get those. See those down there at the bottom? From below, you might get those.
A Caribbean flamingo.
He has to bring it, I guess he has to bring his hand up the smoke.
Wild dogs are found all over the island. Amerindian symbols carved in the rock face dating back to 300 BC. They used these to tell the time and to predict weather conditions from the moon and the stars. The southern half of the island is dominated by salt flats. And in the old days, slaves were used to load the salt onto boats. These are some of the huts which they used to live in.
It's hard to get in, you have to crawl.
Salt is obtained from solar evaporation of seawater. The land is laid out in squares as giant salt pens, which can vary in colour from pink to pale green depending on the stage of evaporation. The giant mounds of salt are very striking. Machinery is now used, instead of slaves, to load the salt onto a conveyor belt. It travels along the conveyor belt and is loaded onto ships which take it away. We approached Cartagena round the back of Isla de Bomba and past this ancient Spanish fort at the entrance. Much of Cartagena is now a modern city with skyscrapers. The fort of Castillo San Felipe de Barajas. One of the many passages inside the fort. The fort is very large and was never taken. The old city of Cartagena was an island with 3 bridges. This is a replica of an old pirate ship sailing up the river. The old town of Cartagena is encircled by an 8-kilometre wall. It's a typical old Spanish town with narrow streets and overhanging balconies. This is the cathedral in Cartagena. And here we have the church of San Pedro de Claver. Arrived in the San Blas from Panama. The San Blas is the home of the Kumar Indians. This is Isla Porvenir, where we are checking in and paying our taxes to the Kunar. Whilst we were at anchor, we were approached by a Kunar man called Nestor, who invited us to come and watch some traditional Kunar dancing on an island called Witchuwala. And this is the Witchukongala dance group who are going to perform for us. They perform 2 dances. The first dance is for the stars, and the second dance is for fish. This is Venancio. He's a master molar maker. He's brought his molars to the boat to show us. They ranged in price from $15 to $100, and the ones at $100 were exquisitely made, greatly intricate work.
Yeah. These are beautifully done. This is a master molar maker.
Right, would you take their seats for Christmas dinner, please?
Okay. Your seats.
Standing up.
I want to get a picture too.
Oh, okay.
The camera's right there. Jack,
Jack it in.
sit somewhere.
2, 4, 6. And that's his home. He does have the cane
walls like we saw on the other islands. I thought it was all open, but he has put the walls up too. And all these coconuts are owned by the inhabitant of this island. I didn't get his name. You can see most of them are old here. We have a lot of crab, land crab holes. This must have been a very big land crab, or maybe an animal that was bigger than a land crab. I don't know. And then there's a French pineapple there. He usually gathers up the yellow ones. Oh, there's William. There comes a native. He must live here. It's nice the way he's put paths through it all. That sail's in really good shape. So many of them are patched together. I use the paddle for the rudder.
Shelter Bay Marina.
That's
The video.
cute. And his
got
name is
him?
Pippin.
Pippin.
It's Pippin.
And he's a 3-ton
And he has a
slot.
smile, and he has a mask on his eyes.
I just woke him up. Well, we give him a bath on Sundays.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, baby shampoo.
And he has his toilet training is a tree. They take him to a tree,
Yep.
and he goes
Good. I hope he doesn't decide
every
he wants
5
to go
days.
now.
He's never done it on a person.
This is the howler monkey, and you'll see it has a baby on its back. The mother is climbing up the tree looking for leaves to eat. There's a little baby, and it's so cute. We saw this in the woods.
It's Sunday the 4th of January. Out on the Blue is anchored on the flats just outside Cologne on the Atlantic side. We've been scheduled to have an evening transit through the first lock, Gatton Lock, and to Gatton Lake where we'll wait for the night. This is another British yacht, Blue Dawn, who we will be transiting with. We wait here to pick up our advisor. Because we're a small yacht, we have an advisor rather than a pilot, and he will tell us what to do and help us to transit through the locks.
And it went well, it's easy.
So at the moment we have got the tanker up front, followed by the tugboat and the other yacht who are rafted together. And then
Blue Dawn.
Blue Dawn. We will be in the centre behind them all, which means that we will have to have lines attached both sides. So we need all 4 of our line handlers to do some work. 2 men are going to throw the lines. So we get ready to catch the lines and then put them through the loop. The men on shore throw us a thin line with a monkey's fist tied on the end to weight it. We take this and pass it through the big bowline on our long lines and tie it to the bowline. We then can pass this back to the men on shore and they can pull our long line onto shore and tie it onto the cleat. Jim and Nancy are acting as our line handlers on the bow, and they're going to catch the line and tend it back to the man on shore. This is our position in the centre of the lock. We have 4 lines, 2 on the bow and 2 on the stern, going back to the shore. Alright, we're all attached now. The lock gates are closing. See, Jack and Carol are doing the lines on the stern. William's required to stay on the helm all the time.
We are leaving the first chamber, which was 37 feet raised, and now we're going into the second chamber. Helen is holding the lines, as you can see. The monkey ball stays on the line, and the men over at the side walk it. There's one walking our line, and the other one behind us is walking the stern line. We are on the bow. You can see how tumultuous the water is, but we have such good good line handlers and a very excellent captain who is controlling the boat beautifully, so none of this swirl is causing any problems for us. The boat next door, there's Helen readjusting the lines as the boat comes up so that there's no slack. It's a bit of a job, but she seems up to it. Our boat ahead of us has an easier job because they just hang on to the tug. But this is fun too, and we're really enjoying it. Emma's doing fine. And as you can see, there's over here working on this. It's doing fine, and Helen is doing an excellent job. Carol working in the back. I think my finger was, yeah. I kept saying, what's that funny thing there? So now we're taking Carol, who is holding her line here at the stern. See, it goes up all the way up this high rail bulkhead. Takes us up by 27 feet. Our duties are nearly over. I just have to bring the line back off the bulkhead. They will do that in a minute. They've taken the monkey fist off because this is the last section of these 3 locks. And we will be going out into Lake Gatun, or Gatun Lake.
The pilot said to pick up a mooring ball. We were expecting the normal sort of mooring ball. It turned out to be this. She's big enough to moor a ship against. Nancy tried to hook it with the boat hook without much success. So Jack stepped across onto it and put the rope round it, which was very brave of him since it's covered in bird droppings. As you can see from this one, it was home to a lot of seagulls who we evicted for the night. They did, however, leave behind their droppings and the most awful smell. It's Monday the 5th of January and this is our advisor arriving for the day to guide us the rest of the way through the canal. He was very helpful, he gave us lots of local information and his name was Ray.
We're going the shortcut through this narrow channel. It takes about 20 minutes. Whereas if we went all the way around like the big boats, it would take an hour and a half.
This is Banana Cut, which is the shortcut. This is Lake Gatun. It's a very large man-made freshwater lake which feeds the locks. It's dependent on rainwater to keep it topped up, so they have to hope that it keeps raining in Panama, otherwise they won't be able to operate the locks, which did happen in 1998. Got yet more dredging operations going on here. This is Gaylord Cut, a 9-mile cut carved through rock and shale. It was the hardest part of the excavation work during the canal construction because they had to cope with repeated landslides. Miraflores lock, which has 2 chambers. Our advisor suggested that we went against the lock wall this time because the transit going down is much more gentle than going up, and it meant that only 2 of the line handlers would have to do any work. All the line handlers have to do is just gently let the lines out as we go down, and we just have to make sure that the boat doesn't touch the side of the lock by holding it up.
Give me slack.
We're leaving the final chamber of Miraflores lock now. On the way out, there's a lot of turbulence, and our advisor warned us about it. But William, being such an excellent skipper, had no problems dealing with the turbulence, and he kept out on the blue perfectly straight as we came out of the lock. This is one of the largest type vessels, a Panamax-sized vessel.
With only 2 feet to spare on either side.
Wow.
While we were in Panama, we participated in several services at St. Luke's Episcopal Cathedral in a small chapel because the roof was being replaced, as you can see.
I will never forget this first morning as out on the blue approached San Cristobal, the most easterly of the Galapagos Islands. A beautiful sunrise was reflected in a mirror-calm sea. Seabirds were flying overhead, calling, skimming the water surface, and diving to catch fish for breakfast. As we sailed down the coast, we saw sea lions swimming in the water. A giant cathedral of volcanic tuff rises from the sea. Spectacular kicker rocks silhouetted against the sky. Here comes our welcoming committee. To add to the magic, 3 dolphins have joined us. They swim with us for some time at our bow. Blue-footed boobies right off the town beach. All over the rocks at low tide are these Sally Lightfoot crabs, so named after a dancer because their movements resemble dancing. These 2 fat ladies colonised our swimming platform. They were very noisy and smelly, and when they went, they left behind an awful mess. There is still a strong population of giant tortoises in the east and south of San Cristobal, but these animals are at La Galapaguera de Cerro Colorado Tortoise Reserve and Breeding Centre. They are adults aged between 20 and 100 years, taken from the wild in San Cristobal. The young are vulnerable to predation by introduced species such as rats and cats. They are raised in pens until large enough to be released back into the wild. Truly prehistoric and not at all camera shy. The iguana, of course. Marine iguanas are only found in the Galapagos. Descended from South American land iguana, they probably got here by drifting on vegetation rafts. They feed on ulva, an alga that grows on the rocks. They make a loud hissing sound when they eject excess salt through their nostrils, and it really makes you jump. They spend much of their time basking in the sun, where they sit on the black lava rocks. Their black body colour helps them to absorb heat efficiently. There are lots of baby sea lions lying on the rocks waiting for their mums.
Lonesome George, the last of the Pinta Island tortoises. He was moved here in 1972. Since then they've been trying to find a female for him to mate with. The 2 tortoises that are in the enclosure with him are from Isabella Island, and they're considered to be his closest relatives, but he refuses to mate with them. So as a last resort, they're going to try and clone him.
Land iguanas are now an endangered species. This animal is part of a breeding program at the Darwin Centre in Santa Cruz.
And the name was Sally.
This rocky inlet is a resting area for white-tipped sharks. You used to be able to go in and snorkel with the sharks, but it was decided that too many tourists were disturbing the sharks, and the sharks were starting to behave erratically. So before there was a confrontation, it was stopped. We leave the Galapagos and begin our journey across the Pacific to the Marquesas. The last 15 days has been truly magnificent. These islands have lived up to their reputation. The scenery is lovely, the wildlife is fantastic, and to crown it all, just as we're leaving, we find that we are surrounded by a pod of whales.
Jim said, "I'll slow the boat down."
I'm not sure this is how it's supposed to be done, but... Oh, you broke the rod!
Oh, you are right. This is one of our batches of bread. We have to make it about every 3 days because there are not too many stores along the way. We're 1,000 miles from the Galapagos and 2,000 miles from the Marquesas, which are our goal. The winds have been good the last week, I guess, isn't it, Helen? Almost a week we've had good winds. Before that, we were pretty much in the doldrums, but we're moving along very well now.
I'm calculating how fast you have to go at different angles to maintain the same speed.
The navigation. And all the instruments. Tonight, we tried a passenger. She probably preferred not to have got on board. It's a squid. Don't waste water on this trip, Nancy. Nancy's having a rainwater wash. She's a stubbers.
It's quite an adventure. We've had things slide from one side to the other. Right now, everything's pretty stable, and we is getting a little rest in between times when he has to go steer by hand, because George can't handle all this wind. Right now, what is it, Jim? 34?
Oh, well, it's down to 21 now.
Oh, now it's calming down.
Nany Bay and
The Marquesas.
to Piva Marquesas, safely at anchor.
Santé. En santé.
En santé. Parlez-vous français?
Our first time ashore, we've taken the dinghy to the dinghy dock in the village of Hanababe.
Nancy getting her land legs. First time ashore for 27 days. 28 days maybe.
This is the Bay of Virgins where we're anchored. It's really one of the most beautiful anchorages that we've ever been in. The scenery is spectacular. It's like something from the Lost World. You could almost imagine there could be dinosaurs amongst these forests. The anchorage at Hiva was very small and very busy, and all the boats had stern anchors, so we had fun deploying our stern anchor, which required getting the dinghy down, something that we haven't had to do very many times. It's quite a busy little town. There are 3 grocery shops, and there's also a post office which has internet. The French artist Paul Gauguin was one of the famous residents. He lived in the town and he's buried in the cemetery at the top of the hill. Not far from Hiva is a lovely island of Tahuata, and we anchored in Nany Bay. This is Nukuhiva, and the anchorage in Tahuai Bay is very large and it's very easy to anchor here. Plenty of space. The Tiki Garden in Tahuai. A tiki is a traditional Polynesian stone statue representing a god. We've hired a car for a tour around the island.
And there's some beautiful bougainvillea right behind you if you want to take a picture. Beautiful.
There's the trash fire.
That's a shame, that's
Let's stand over here, Nancy.
The largest archaeological site on the island. This is what passed for a road in much of the island. It's a good job we've got a 4-wheel drive vehicle. It's farewell to Nukuhiva and the Marquesas. We carry on our sail across the Pacific to the Tuamotu Islands. Following a 5-day passage from the Marquesas, out on the Blue approached Ahi in the Tuamotu Islands in the morning of the 1st of May. He took the video camera and you can see an aerial view of the coral heads that we'd had to navigate. The lagoon's teeming with fish. This shoal was just off our stern. We were treated to numerous beautiful sunsets. This one was while on passage between Ahi and Rangiroa. Rangiroa is the largest atoll in the Tuamotus. The pass into the lagoon is much deeper than that at Ahi, but is still best approached at slack water. The anchorage is not as sheltered as that in Ahi, and with a 20-mile fetch became very uncomfortable in a fairly strong southwesterly wind. Champagne and popcorn to celebrate our arrival in the Tuamotus.
Okay.
Abattoiro is the biggest village, with a couple of fairly well supplied supermarkets. It's a distance of 6 miles. We went by taxi. Also nearby it has a marina, but not a marina as we might think of one. It just has moorings for a few small powerboats, motorboats. Again, the lagoon was teeming with fish. These are just a few that we were able to photograph from the marina dock. The coral reef near the anchorage provided excellent snorkelling. There were loads of fish in all sorts of different colours and shapes and sizes. It was like swimming in an aquarium.
Station pearls are the reason why these beads are yellow. It's because before the operation we put some antiseptic stuff called like betadine, you know, to try to avoid infections after operation. And us, we put that element round because we try to make a round thing. But if we would just put a nucleus into the oyster, a year and a half later, we would just harvest on nothing or a nucleus. No graft, no pearl. And to get that graft, we have to sacrifice a young oyster and now another one, a graft giver, and collect the organic tissues which are making the border color of the oysters. With a pair of scissors, we take these tissues off, we make a strip about that long width, and then we cut that strip in several pieces. And that is the DNA of the coming pearl. Remember, no graft, nucleus, no pearl. And produce the pearl after 18 months. And
18
nucleus, graft. If everything gets okay, the graft is going to grow around. Okay?
So on the inside of each pearl.
And we leave them in that net for 40 days, because 40 days is the time required by the animal to start and almost finish its cicatrization. And 40 days later, we are going to check to see if the operation was a success or no. They just have that space to work.
Yeah.
And all is done in that appendix here. Kind of tank you can see here, see? So before the operation, they are going to check first to see if that appendix is big enough to receive the operation. If it's okay, with the scalpel they make a turning incision leading from here to the appendix. In that incision, remember, we put two different elements, the nucleus and then the graft. And you see the pearl is done inside. You can touch. Oh, you see?
Take a picture.
Yes, yes, sir.
And the muscles behind.
Muscle is there.
Yeah.
Would you like to harvest the pearl, madam?
Yes.
Good.
Sure.
So you're going to take it between your three fingers and you pull it out.
Oh, okay.
It won't shout, I promise.
This one?
Not here.
Oh, here. Oh, okay. Oh, I got it. Good. Oh, it's a nice one.
It's a circle shape.
Yeah.
We were lucky to be able to watch this race with the locals with their outrigger canoes. It was very exciting, and they were accompanied by a flotilla of small motorboats, all shouting their support. The canoes went right past our boat in the anchorage. We got a grandstand view. A huge market sells everything from fruit and veg, fish, meat, to souvenirs and fresh flowers. We hired a car for the day and drove round the island. This is an ancient Polynesian cultural site which has been restored.
This is a replica of the houses they had. I want to sit on those rocks, though.
These stone platforms, called marae, are where the religious ceremonies were conducted. We were surprised to find that there was no entrance charge. They were really lovely, and we had a good look round.
It's a gorgeous jungle, just beautiful. Oh, and look up too, Helen. The vines that come down.
Pretty cascades. We picked up a hitchhiker as we left Tahiti to travel the 10 or so miles across to Moorea. We anchored inside the reef near Robinson Cove and came ashore at the sailing club by dinghy. We walked to the head of the valley, where there was an agricultural college and a shrimp farm. We enjoyed a night of Polynesian culture and dancing at Tiki Village. This was our attempt. The men didn't escape. Jim had to go as well. William, however, managed to disappear. And this is how it should be done. Raiatea is the second most populous island in French Polynesia after Tahiti. It's surrounded by a reef and lagoon, and we thought this might be a 5-star hotel. The Protestant Church in Utaroa. This hotel claims to be the most exclusive in French Polynesia, and it was certainly very expensive at $1,000 a day without food. We picked up a mooring ball outside the yacht club. A local pearl farm. Bora Bora is Polynesia's most famous and glamorous isle. Her lagoon is world famous for its beauty. The main island rises from the centre of a multicoloured lagoon, surrounded by offshore motu islets, inside a protective necklace of coral. A local artisans fair taking place in a marquee on the dock in the principal village of Baikapi. Of course, we had to go for a Bloody Mary in the famous Bloody Mary's Yacht Club and Restaurant. Well, we gave them our names. The wash basin in the ladies' room is rather cute.
Lots of nights that are exciting, like this.
Exciting sailing.
Yes.
Out on the Blue arrived in Nui on Sunday morning, 7th of June, after an 8-day crossing from Bora Bora. The island is an elevated coral outcropping perched on top of a seamount rising from very deep water. Its area of 100 square miles makes it the largest raised coral island in the world. Going ashore by dinghy was interesting. Because of the surge and there was nowhere to moor your dinghy against the wharf, you had to attach it to this crane and hoist it completely out of the water and swing it onto the wharf. Once you got it out of the water, you put it onto this trolley and moved it to a parking place somewhere out of the way. When we came back to put our dinghy back into the water, guess what? The crane had broken down. Luckily, some fishermen came to our aid and went and fetched the man who was responsible for the maintenance of the crane, and he set about mending it while we waited. The local fishermen had no such problems. They launched their boats by walking down a ramp, putting them in the water. These are their fishing boats. They're very narrow, dug-out canoes with an outrigger to stabilise them. They really do make it look very easy.
Look at that. Makes it look very easy.
I snorkeled here. Fresh water from the land mixes with the salt water. The fresh water's cold and the sea water's much warmer. The chasm's very deep, but the water's extremely clear, so you can see right down to the bottom. It's almost like being in a cave. It's quite amazing. This is a quite spectacular sea cave that we passed through on the way down to Talivar Arches. It's a bit of a climb down, but well worth it to see these huge arches carved out of the coral. Limu Pools is a beautiful area for snorkelling. It's another place where fresh water from the land mixes with the salt water and you get this thermocline. There are lots of these very bright blue fish in the water. We moored in the main harbour at Niafu, opposite the Vava'u Yacht Club. We donated an Out on the Blue t-shirt with all our names on it.
There you go. Out on the Blue is hanging.
The local distillery seems to be one man with a still in his back garden where he makes vanilla flavoured rum.
Yeah, of course. So we're working on it.
This is Swallow's Cave, so named because it's got swallows living in it. It's accessible by dinghy and it's quite a large cave. The only thing is that, as you'll notice, there's a lot of local graffiti, which seems, in my opinion, to spoil it somewhat. Otherwise, it's a very spectacular cave.
Welcome to your feast. Not cooking on board tonight.
Use the banana leaves as their tablecloths, and this one, oh, that's our spoon, yeah. That's can you just put it inside the papaya?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And
I got one.
one more. And they use this one. That's the half from the coconut shell. That's our bowl. Yeah, that's our bowl. And we also use the green papaya as another bowl. And that's from the banana stem. Yeah, that's our plates.
The band kept happy with their bowl of kava to drink. Pigs are all over the place and they're most definitely free range. These ones are enjoying themselves on the mud flats in the old harbour at Niafu on Vava'u.
Bula. These ladies have all these beautiful things that they've made for sale. They're lovely.
And the children go to the local school.
Can wait.
After the chief had welcomed us and blessed the carver with a traditional ceremony, we were allowed to look around the village. This is the Methodist church. Strum summoned people to church.
She wants another picture of you.
There you are, all of you with the boat.
Guides. These are our guides.
Close by was Cessy village. We dinghied ashore. The carver was given to the minister of a Methodist church, which we also thought was quite amusing. After some more careful navigation around the coral reefs, we anchored in Vanuatu Bay on Naviti Island. It had a beautiful long white sandy beach. Out by some fellow cruisers. The path led across the hill to Claire's place, which for some reason I thought was a tea room.
Into the jungle.
It was an interesting walk through the jungle and also through some very long grass. Finally found our way to find that it wasn't a tea room but the home of a lovely Fijian couple and their grandson.
This is Claire's place. Bula Claire.
She backed onto the beach and the view was beautiful. We went ashore by dinghy, which was quite tricky because there was a coral reef which was very shallow that we had to negotiate.
Want to take a card from here?
The local people made us very welcome in the village. We took them some small gifts and they came out with a huge basket of fruit in exchange. We went with some of the other cruisers for a trip to the active volcano Mount Yasser, and this was our transport. There were 18 of us altogether in this pickup truck. Jim and Nancy were lucky and they sat in the front with the driver. The rest of us were in the back.
We've had to get out because the truck can't get up the hill, it's too steep.
The noise you can hear that sounds like a cowbell is the truck. Apparently it was something wrong with one of its brakes.
Yes, perfect.
Finally arrived, the truck had to be parked facing downhill so that it could be bump started for the return journey. It's just after sunset and the view from the top is spectacular. There's a crescent moon rising above the volcano. Mount Yasser's spitting out a few boulders and making quite a few rumbling noises, but nothing to be too alarmed about. It doesn't seem particularly dangerous, but don't turn your back on it. It erupts and throws huge lava bombs hundreds of feet in the air, luckily not in our direction. So sit back and watch the firework display.
New Caledonia looks more barren than the other islands we visited. It does have an unusual New Caledonia pine, found nowhere else in the world. Our first adventure was to tow a stranded catamaran into the Port Moselle marina. Here we are tying it up. And this is the marina. The Museum of New Caledonia contains artifacts from 1000 BC, showing tools for hunting, cannibalism, and cooking.
Hello, Australia! We are here! We had an interesting last 2 days, kind of rocking, because we ended up being so fast we had to wait to come in because we did not want to pay that overtime fee of $600. So here we are, Australia, happy to walk down Jim's ladder. And here's Jim.
And we've traveled 10,443 sea miles in 8.5 months, and it's been a fabulous trip, and here we are in Australia at this beautiful marina, and happy to be here.
And we say thanks to William, our captain, and to Helen, his mate, who have done a wonderful job getting us here.
Oh, where are you? Come here. Come here.
Oh! Something else? A kiss in the sunshine in Australia.
First beer in Australia.
Wow. Oh my golly, it went higher than the boat. It was beautiful. And here's to our Captain William and our crew, Jim and Nancy, and Helen, our Admiral and photographer. Whoa. We hope you all are enjoying bubbly somewhere else. We have had a wonderful trip.
How many thousand miles?
10,443.
Thank you, Jim. Cheers.
Whoops. Oh, happy days. And that was, what's the good one? How do we say? Effiku. And cheers and sante.
Bottoms up.
A little more for this.